This is the first video in a series of interviews that I did with my sister Rachel about producing. So if you want to know more about that, stick around. What's up, homegrown filmmaker? Welcome back to my channel. My name is Poling Swet, and I am a completely self-taught screenwriter and director. So I sat down with my sister Rachel, who's a producer, and just asked her some questions to get to understand producing a little bit more. It was interesting to hear her perspective, and I know she has a lot of good nuggets of wisdom for you guys. Rachel produces all of Abundant House Films, so if you want to see her production work, you can go to our website. You can go to Abundant House Films on YouTube and see the films that she has produced. But without further ado, on to the interview.
Hi. Hello. So to start off, I thought we'd go into a little bit about how you got started in producing, what drew you to producing, and like your history. What have you produced in the past?
Well, it was kind of a really soft evolution, I would say. Like I didn't know I wanted to do that. I didn't know anything about it really. It was really doing makeup that kind of got me into it. So I was really interested in historical hair and makeup, and we had an opportunity to work on a local film, and they were looking for a makeup artist. So I was like, great, I'll do it. Didn't have a kit. That's okay. I was like, I'll figure it out. So Annie and Max, who's now my husband, and basically everybody else, all of our siblings, were volunteering on this film as well. And I just started picking up things that I could help with since we joined so very early on in the process, like even before the script was really written. And the director/producer of this piece just kind of saw that I was doing that and was just making suggestions and just helping with things, and was like, you want to do more? And I was like, sure, I guess. So I didn't really know that what I was doing had a name, and I thought I was just being helpful. And that's just kind of how I am. Like,
Yep.
I'm the oldest sibling. Like, I'm mother's helper. Like, that's just who I always have been. Just somebody who sees a need and just kind of figures out if I can help or if I can fill that. And so I didn't really realize that I had already been kind of producing in a way with some of your short films and helping Max with some things. Basically, I can just see holes in organization and just be like, well, let's fix that. You know, I'm the person who packs the snacks when everybody forgot. You know, I'm the person who's like, maybe we should know where we're meeting before we start driving. You know, like I'm the like super planner aheader kind of person, and I just always have been. And so just being involved in our life meant that basically I'd been producing for a while and just didn't know it had a name. And so when I did this film and it came time for the credits, and the director/producer was like, so really what you did was produce this thing. Because by the time we got to the end of it, like I had amassed so many production roles. I was like, I don't know what I should be credited as.
I can do that.
I didn't do that.
I can do that one too.
So I did a lot of the location management and basically local producing. I didn't know that it was called anything. And so that's kind of how I got started. And by the end of that film, so probably, it took about a year of being involved in all of that to go like, oh, like being helpful on a film is like a job. And I could do more of that. I just realized how big of a need there was, because I didn't have any aspirations about being a director. Like, that's not my thing. That's your thing. You're really good at it.
You wouldn't have said that you were interested in filmmaking at all.
No. I like movies, and all of the people I love are involved in making movies. So I was just along for the ride. And then, I was like, oh, this is an actual job. And not only that, it's a really needed job. You reach a point where your creativity needs to be balanced with organization. And it's hard to find those organization people.
Because they're not interested in film. They're off already doing things, organizing things, making things happen in their life somewhere else.
Yeah, they're working at church, or they're organizing some event, or like you'll find them in the event space doing other things.
What did you do from there in working with us in all the films that we have done over the years?
We decided as a whole that we wanted to make movies together with Max and Micah. And I think, Annie's married to Micah and I'm married to Max. And, so our relationship with them was evolving while we were making movies. And so it was just like, oh, this is like a fun thing we're doing with our friends. And we decided to get more involved in the local film community and like actually try and do things. And so we made Weeping Willow, which is my first big producing thing. Basically, a lot of the elements that you need for a film came from me, and that is producing. And by the end of that film, I basically had produced a whole short film, and it was not a short film, let's just say. Like it was a big producing endeavor for somebody who had never done anything like that before, and I learned a lot of things. So from there, we went on to do several more short films and just kind of work with other professionals, and I could see where there were different roles within producing and, which ones suited me the best. And, over the years, we've decided like we actually do want to do this as a business, and we want to create films that make money. And so that's kind of where my focus has turned is, we need to be making original feature films because that is where you make money. And so my learning process over the past couple of years has been all about how do you do this and make money? Because that's the side of it that, you don't really get to learn when you're just doing short films for fun or for learning purposes.
So I feel like that was a really good soft opening to what a producer actually is, but could you actually define what a producer does, what a producer is?
Sure. So the short answer is there's lots of different kinds of producers, and so it's really hard to nail down exactly what they do, which is why no one knows exactly what they do. So they're the resource people is how I like to put it. So they get people what they need. They get what the project needs to get done. And depending on the type of producer you are, they see a project from conception to release.
I feel like one of the big confusions is everyone kind of knows that the director and the producer are in charge, but they don't really know the difference. And so that explanation helps. But I'm wondering if you have an experience or like an interaction that we would have to help just kind of demonstrate what that difference is.
Possibly a good example of that would be during auditions. So I set up the auditions. I put out the casting calls for Weeping Willow specifically. Like I got the place set up. I got the time slots filled. Like I organized the auditions, and then, you and I both watch the auditions, but I think we're looking for different things.
Well, I run the auditions, just run it and talk them through the acting side of things.
You do the directing portion of the audition, but prior to that, they were communicating with me for the most part. There's a pairing of like the organizational part versus the art part. I guess you can kind of clearly see that. But then also like we're both looking at the audition in a creative way, but like I'm assuming our perspectives about the talent that we're looking at are probably pretty different. We're looking at them for different reasons.
I'm looking for authenticity, for responsiveness to me, and just do they fit the character? Do they fit my vision of the character? And also, just how are they to talk to and work with? Mm-hmm.
I'm looking at screen presence and how do they feel on camera? How are they responding to you? And also, how are they in communicating? And even more specifically, if we're working with somebody who has an agent, how has their agent communicated with me? Because there are some agents who I will not work with again, just because like I prefer to communicate with people who communicate back with me quickly and easily. We're just looking at them from a different perspective. And then when we're talking about like who we liked from the audition for which roles, you know, it's a mutual decision based on how we both felt coming from our different perspectives.
Yeah. That's a good example to look at there. So we're coming at a lot of the exact same stuff, just really different perspectives.
Yeah. I can give another example. So when we're on set, you know, I'm often behind monitor, you're behind monitor. And, you know, for the most part, I let you direct, do your thing, make the calls, make the decisions, unless I have something that's like really strong, like I don't think that's gonna sell, because you're looking at the whole movie as an artistic piece and as a story, and I'm looking at it as a saleable product. Right?
Can often be the same, can often be very different.
Right. And so every now and then we do have to have a sidebar discussion about what's not working for either of us, right? And, you know, I can't always be behind monitor because I'm, you know, putting out fires, or I'm answering the AD's questions, or, you know, I'm dealing with what's coming the next day and making decisions about that. Part of what the producer is doing on a larger film is basically when you're in production on a film that has a budget, you're pressing the gas pedal on the budget as soon as you start rolling. And so controlling the flow of money is a huge job. And so that's a lot of what I'm handling as well, is like, okay, like, do we have money for this thing that's coming up tomorrow? Are the people being paid, et cetera, et cetera. And so when I do get to be behind monitor, it's looking at this as a finished product. Is this gonna sell well?
So I wanted to get into the meat of producing, and I think probably the best place to kind of start is, what are the most important things to consider producing? Like you said, what is your perspective? What are you looking at? What are you focused on?
So I think to answer that question, I need to back up just a tiny bit to talk about what I'm looking for in pre-production to actually give something the green light and say, let's go. So I've heard another producer talk about this, and it made a lot of sense to me to say, like, in order to have the green light, you have to have 5 elements in play. You have to have a story, which is the script, the money to make it. You have to have the talent attached to it, the director attached to it, and you have to have distribution. And the distribution part can be really small if you're not really planning on making money off of it, but it's a huge factor if you are planning on making money with the project. Those 5 things are what you need for a green light, basically, no matter how big or small the production is. So on like the surface level, an executive producer specifically, that is what they do, is they collect those 5 elements together. They find a script and they attach talent and they attach a director to it. And then they, you know, you got to figure out like which one comes first, the distribution or the investment, or do we get enough of investment to lock in some talent or director? Like it's this kind of jigsaw puzzle. And then when it clicks, then you get the green light to go. So for smaller films, you still have to have those 5 elements, but maybe they'll come a little bit easier. Like if you're a writer director, and so you have the director and the script, and you get your friend to be the talent, and you're planning on releasing on YouTube, and you've saved up, you know, a few $100s for some costumes. There you go, you greenlit your project, right? So what I'm looking for is those elements that make a finished product. So by bringing on investors, we basically made a promise about the finished product, that we're going to take it all the way to the finish line, and that it's going to be distributed, because that's where the money gets in. And attaching a distributor to a project means that you've promised a final product and that they have some say about that product because they're the ones who actually have to take it to market. A lot of what I'm looking at is, are we meeting what I know will sell well? Are we hitting the target demographics that we said that this movie was for? So, like, if we're doing a Christmas rom-com, are we hitting the elements that make this film a Christmas rom-com? Basically, is our execution of this product matching the promise that we made to deliver a saleable product?
Right. So that's the executive producer's role side of things. It's very business oriented. Like you said, it's about products and making money and that side of things.
So within that, there's several levels of producer. Some of the other types of producers are like creative producers or line producers, and even like unit production managers. And production managers are like mixed in within there, and just like regular producer, like with no extra word attached to it, just producer. Those people have different roles. So like unit production manager will have a lot more to do with the daily operations and have a lot more to do with the management of the budget. The producer will have control over the project as a whole, so they'll have a lot more to say about the creative decisions because they're seeing it from pre-production through post-production, whereas some producers only work in, when you're actually in production, and you can also just have post-production managers as well. So they're basically the people that handle the logistics of making it happen for the area in which they cover. So a lot of times, like an executive producer will bring on a producer, like once the big five is set in place, the executive producer will hire a producer to actually manage the product to bring it from script to screen.
That makes sense. So do you think there's room for executive producing really in smaller productions? Say like the size of Weeping Willow or Descent or something like that?
Yeah, well, I think that whoever is producing is doing all the producing, usually. So, yes, you're executive producing, but you're also just line producing and, you're doing everything. It's usually just one person and some PAs, right? Like if you get PAs. So it's it's only when things are more separated and it actually becomes a career and it actually becomes an investment vehicle that those jobs get separated.
So can you describe what a line producer does?
A line producer is very specifically about the budget. So they'll be brought on usually, so it's very similar to a unit production manager, but the line producer sees like the whole production, whereas a unit production manager may not work on the whole production. They may work on like units at a time. So they are the ones who receive all of the budgetary requests and dole out the money, and they're the ones who all the receipts go to, et cetera, et cetera.
I thought that was just like an accountant. That's an actual like producer?
So usually the accounting department reports to the line producer, but they're the ones who are actually making the decisions a little bit more rather than just doing the accounting.
I see. I think what people want to know more about is unit production managing. At the level of doing short films and doing them for learning, that's what most people think of as producing. So could you describe a unit production manager's job?
When I've been brought on as a UPM before, the job was really in support of the producer. So the big pieces were already in place, and I was just there to really help that vision come to life in the day-to-day operations. So that means like I'm looking forward to the next day and the next week, not the next 6 months. I'm managing the day-to-day operations, and on some short films that means like making sure that things are going right with craft services, or like, oops, we broke a prop, got to get another one, working with the AD to make sure that the schedule for the next day, is right. Oftentimes someone like that will either do strip boarding or help with the strip boarding. So when we did A Match Made at Christmas, the strip boards were kind of a collaborative effort between our first AD, me, the producer, and Annie, who had some input. But it was really just me and our first AD because, I'm handling all the actors' schedules, all of the location schedules, and also just like the needs of the story as well.
And the crew schedules too.
And the crew schedules, yeah. So all of that goes into creating a schedule, whether you're doing a short film or a feature film. And obviously the longer the film and the more complicated it is, the more time that takes. I think we probably spent 2 days making strips, So it was, it's that kind of stuff where you're dealing with the logistics of people and things and equipment, money going out, and just kind of making sure that everyone has what they need and that we're staying within the box that we've created for ourselves, basically.
So say you have a short film that you're filming for 2 days. It has 5 locations, 3 actors, maybe 10 crew members or something like that. And your budget could be anywhere like $100 to $500 maybe. It's like at that level, the producer is doing all of those jobs and also maybe even doing more of the assistant director, the first AD's job. Make sure we have those things. Make sure those people are going to show up on time. Make sure everyone knows what the locations are, all that sort of stuff. And then the more logistical things you add, the bigger it gets, the more you have to delegate because you just can't be everywhere at once. And those jobs start breaking apart, as you said, into the different areas and types of producers.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
So this was just the first part of the interview. There's actually going to be 3 parts. So if you would like a notification for when the next 2 parts come out, make sure you hit subscribe below. And I just want to say thank you so much for watching. It really means a lot, the support that you give to this channel. I hope you learned something new about producing. If you would like to join the Homegrown Filmmaker community, you can do that on Facebook. We have a private Facebook group where we share our projects, receive critiques, receive encouragement, and just talk about movies because that's what we like to do. If you'd like to find me on socials, I'm the Homegrown Filmmaker pretty much everywhere. I do post more frequently on Instagram, so that's a good place to go follow me if you'd like more updates and more content. But that's all for now. Thank you so much for watching. Stay productive, stay creative, and I will see you next time.
That's trying to come out, so I'm like,
Josiah, that better not be in the bloopers.